Right, so we're about a week and a half out, right, from the card previews of High Seas. So May 15th to the 17th is the initial card previews. Then the world premiere starts May 23rd, with of course the calling in Taipei, right, and then pre-release from May 30th. So altogether, we're relatively close to finally figuring out everything that's going on with High Seas, and that is beautiful. But that also means we've only got a little bit of wiggle room left to speculate, right, and think about what exactly we might personally like to see. So I thought, why don't we spend some time talking about the cogs, the allies, the harpoons, and of course a little bit about gold, right? So we'll start off nice and easy, Puffin, Poly, Golden Cogs, and their mechanics, right? So what would I necessarily like to see? Well, we have Sky Simmer, we have Golden Sky Warden, and we have Palatur Aeronaut as sort of our indication, right? So all of them make use of our cogs in some fashion. Now, they all are open-ended, meaning that it doesn't necessarily have to be the golden cogs created through Puffin Hightail, right? Sky Simmer is tap a cog you control, not tap a golden cog. Golden Sky Warden is galvanize any item, but then if it's a golden cog, you get something extra. And Palatur Aeronaut goes back to tap a cog, right? So altogether, this means that most likely we will be seeing cogs aplenty. So what would I like to see? Well, nice and simple. Zero cost, right? Cost, no effect, crank, one steam counter, so basically just a version of Golden Cog that you can slot on your deck, you can find, because you gotta remember, these are connected to Puffin, right? So in that sense, finding one of them, even if it does nothing, means it's netting you that card most likely from Puffin's secondary ability, and then also fueling these other abilities, and you can double dip with these items, which is definitely a big thing, right? You could Sky Simmer, tap the cog you played, and then on your opponent's turn, block with the Galvanize and get that value out of it. So generally speaking, I don't think that Cogs need a effect or anything else really going on other than just cranking and steam counters. So initially, right, zero cost, no effect, crank with one steam counter, or a one cost with crank and two steam counters. So you can float it for that extra turn, right? And I think again, you have other ways to get the value out of them. Although technically speaking, right, unlike Harpoons, unlike the allies, Cogs aren't necessarily tied to Pirate, right? So Harpoon's a Pirate Ranger, the ally is currently a Pirate Necromancer, so whatever Necromancer's main shtick is by itself, we don't have any allies for that pool. It'll probably go the route of Illusionist, but generally speaking, Cogs are Mechanologist. All the cards that we have, aside from the Golden Sky Warden, are Mechanologist, meaning that the Cogs should have some sort of functionality for everyone, right? So we kind of want them on the high cost end for Dash.io, right? But maybe something nice to help amp up Max, right? The general other thought for Cogs for me is then just connecting it to what hyperdrivers functionally do, but better, because again, there is that higher level of dynamic use out of the Cogs. Again, tap for a bonus, galvanize for a bonus, crank for a bonus, right? So again, they don't really need anything going on, and hyperdrivers by themselves don't have crank. That's a max thing, right? They're just there to serve as essentially resource pools for you to utilize with your boosting. And it does seem like Puffin might be heading away from boosting. So if we were to get cog effects, right, I'd like to see them again, that higher end of cost. So one or two cost, crank, one steam counter, you're getting the use, you're getting the crank use, you're getting the initial tap use, right, if you're using in conjunction with another card, and then you're getting that galvanized use before it's destroyed on your upkeep. So again, one steam counter I think is absolutely fine. I'd really love to see them as instants, right? So instant tap, Mechanologist action gains X. So we might see a cog that gives a Mechanologist action +1. We might see a cog that gives it one extra block. That could be useful. You could amp a block, right, and then still galvanize it with the next block. So there's versatility that I would like to see out of the cogs, but it does rely on that instant. I think having cogs as this instant mechanic that to again reinforce either attacking or defending would be really nice to see for Mechanologist and would give them a bit more versatility, right, that they sort of lack when it comes to comparing them to another, straight narrow class. So again, cogs, right, higher end of cost, so one or two cost, crank, steam counter, instant, non-action, right, please, and tap, makes sense. Again, it will untap at the end of your turn, so you get to use it on your opponent's turn as well if the tap mechanic works. I mean, even a tap that gives it +1 to its power could be good into, say, poppers, right? So, yeah, that's what I'd like to see for cogs. Now, when it comes to Necromancer and our allies, right, this is definitely our big questionable scenario. How many will we get, right? my mentality goes to a good old package of 6 in set, right? And probably 2 or 3 in the actual armory deck, and then some overlap of that sense. So that's a nice wide variety of allies to pull from. Now, obviously, they won't all be run. Currently, we have Charm, Rigor Mortis, and Sawbones. They do give us some indication of basically the breakdown of stats and cost, right? So I would like to see 4 more allies for high seas. So again, we have Charm and Rigor Mortis, right? Plus 4 more. From that, I essentially would think a 3 set of vanilla. So we have Rigor Mortis being a 1 cost that then is a 1 cost swing for 6. So I would assume another 1 cost that's then a no cost swing for 4, and then still another 1 cost that then is a 2 cost swing for 8, right? To get that breakdown of stats. Now, to me, they would be the rare allies, right? They would be the fodder allies, and then we get some more utility styled allies similar to Chum, where they have that higher health pool and have that extra tap mechanic that does something a bit more functionally useful, other than just existing as a beat stick in the arena, right? So, yeah. That's what I'd like to see for allies. I would highly expect that we do get a nice big package. Again, of the 3 we have, you can take 3 copies of all. They're not legendary, so that's 9, right? I could see that being pushed to, 18 to maybe 20 something as a, third of your deck is your allies, because I would highly assume that that is still our core mechanic when it does come to Necromancer. Now, we do have those interactable cards, right? So, paddle fast aboard the ship and hoist them up all allow us to utilize an ally in some other fashion to gain some other benefit. So, generally speaking, if we are flooding the board, maintaining 1 to then funnel into a card like paddle faster and then 1 to swing with gives you that flexibility and utility of the allies that you're maintaining, and then also gives your opponent that functionality of to go, well, that's a beat stick, I'll leave that up. That has a utility effect, I'll get rid of that, right? Something like that. So, yeah, altogether, tuning-wise, health and everything, we'll have to see, but it does seem to me, right? No cost in terms of the action attack is a 4, right? 1 cost is a 6, and therefore 2, an 8, or we don't actually get a 2 at all, right? It doesn't necessarily need an 8, right? They can slot into just that 4-6 range, be mid-rangey, because you still have to set up, you still have to get the board running, you don't need the really big, powerful finishes, right? Then, items. So, we know we have our 9 amulets, and I would highly assume that they're all going to be this Legend of the Watery Grave, so therefore they're all functional for gravy bones. But I would also like to see, generally, just more items, right? As the bread and butter of Pirate Necromancer. So you have your allies as your attack, and then you have your items as your functionality, and everything we play from the graveyard, so you can get that go again, because items really need that go again, right? So that flexibility would be really nice to see. In terms of what the actual items do, well, utility effects, right? So potentially something like use it to tap an ally to untap an ally, right? Converting your utility effect or reactivating your utility effect rather than one of your beat sticks could be interesting, or vice versa to get that bigger swing, right? Or something with charges that then could, say, benefit from discarding your allies, give you more incentive to discard them through other effects, right? Not just getting them into the graveyard so they're playable. Or potentially even a very, very sparse, and I do want sparse, way to reflip, right, your Watery Grave cards that have landed in the graveyard. So once your ally is destroyed from board, it goes into your graveyard, Watery Grave triggers its main effect, which is when this is put into your graveyard from the arena, turn it face down, and you can't play it, right? Now, I don't know targeting-wise, because they just don't function as any sort of card, right? Once they're in the graveyard face down. But again, wording, mechanic, anything new can take care of that. So potentially, right, a way to re-access certain allies could be interesting, especially from a decision choice going into X matchup. So again, I'd like to see that highly, highly sparse. And then, of course, just more cards that allow you to utilize your allies in different ways. And again, create those choice points for your opponent where they know you can't swing back to back with certain allies because there's functionally not enough go-agains, but you can definitely funnel them into these other cards. Now, the Marlin and the Harpoons, right? So currently we have our 2 big Harpoons and our creatable Goldfin Harpoon, along with our nice big Hammerhead Harpoon Cannon, a nice old pay 4 to give it +4, and then if it's a Harpoon, overpower, or a big game trophy shot, another 2 for 4, it allows you to essentially load with Marlin, and if it's a Harpoon, creates a gold on hit. So, in terms of the Harpoons that we do have, right, we could go down the easy route of just 3 more Majestics. They're all 2 for 6, they all have Go Fish, but they target those other sets of cards. So for instance, King Kraken Harpoon currently targets a non-attack action, King Shark Harpoon targets an attack action. So we could have one for an instant, defense reaction, or attack reaction. Now, generally speaking, I don't think obviously an instant or a defense reaction would be that functionally useful because your opponent can probably just dump it, right? Although there are ways to, get around defense reactions. Instance becomes the big one. So generally speaking, I would expect 1 more Majestic right? Harpoon just targeting that attack reaction. So a 2 for 6 with Go Fish, that if you hit an attack reaction, you get the gold mechanic. But then in conjunction with those majestic harpoons, I would also expect a set of rare harpoons that are nice and simple, right? Probably just 1 for 5s, have Go Fish, and then just target a color of card, right? So again, Go Fish, if your opponent discards a red, you get the gold, and then vice versa for yellow and blue. I think that would make up a good sect of 6 different harpoons, right? 3 copies apiece, so we're at 18. I think that's around the sweet spot for how many we'd probably want to see. Now, they obviously can't all be 2 for 6s. I don't think LSS necessarily wants to give Marlin this whole big range of poppers, right? Or that big stat line of, again, 6 for 10. That, again, does something, overpowers and forces discount. That's pretty crazy. Now, obviously, there's still ways around that, right? It has to hit the specific card for the discard mechanic to actually work, right? So if it's not the correct color, if it's not an attack action, it's not a non-attack action, then your opponent won't have to discard it. So there are ways to block effectively out of it and still have something they can functionally do on their turn. But that is what I would like to see in the sense of harpoons, right? At least, again, 1 more majestic and a few rares to go along with it, right, to show up our arrows flight. Now, again, they are all Pirate Ranger cards, so Harpoons are going to be intrinsically a Pirate Ranger mechanic. Now, gold. So, we already have a clear indication that the way gold is being done for Pirate is obviously, to me at least, a lot better than the way it's being done for heavy hitters. Now, obviously, Clash is not a horrendous mechanic, especially in Guardian, that has a lot of big things, but for the broader sense, it does drop off, right? And then Wager being a mechanic that rewards either player rather than just rewarding you for triggering the effect, obviously falls short to what we're seeing through actual pirate cards. So our gold-baited hook, right? Next pirate attack this turn gets when this hits, steal a gold, or if they don't have gold, create a gold. So again, you're getting the gold. If your opponent denies it, you're not getting the gold, but they're not getting the gold. So intrinsically, straight away better than Wager, right? It's comparable to me to a card like Pay Up. If the defending hero controls gold, this gets overpower. And then when it hits, right, you get to steal their gold. Otherwise, it deals 1 damage to them, right? So there's definitely an overlap of ideas here to me, but it's just, in a sense, going to be a little bit more balanced, right? With less fallout if your opponent actually denies the mechanics. So obviously, Conqueror of the High Seas missing is still nice and big, but it's not like Wager, where if your opponent blocks it out, now they get the bonus, right? So obviously, more gold effects would be lovely to see, and we will definitely be getting a whole ton of gold effects, and I would highly assume that they are just going to be strictly pirate mechanics, not so much in the generic slot, which is absolutely fine, right? I'd love them for Melody or any of my nice combo heroes, but still, to have gold done in this fashion, to then feed into the actual abilities of our heroes is fantastic. So yeah, just a lot of different ways to basically generate gold on hit that, again, is contestable by your opponent, but doesn't benefit them and therefore isn't a detriment like our Wager mechanics, right? Anyway, there we go. That's my last roundup of thoughts come high seas. So, looking forward to the spoilers, right? What do you want to see? What do you expect to see? Let me know. Enjoy. Yeah.